video today with the silver BMW 335, the N55 E92. I've been having some clutch problems ever since we did the stage 3 spec clutch install. I believe it was because it was either installed incorrectly or there was something wrong with the pressure plate that came directly from the factory or whatnot. But however, we're just going to get started on dropping the trans and unbolting everything so get ready to drop it. And we'll completely walk you through the entire process. Like I said, this is an N55 E92, so it's the 2011 335. For anybody that's looking to do a clutch install or a clutch and replacement, this is the video for you. So thanks for watching, guys.
Okay, to get started, you want to go ahead and undo those 13 mil nuts on the exhaust flange that goes from the downpipe to the actual exhaust itself. So go ahead and get those undone. Then you also want to come here right by the trans brace. There's another hanger that goes across to the actual exhaust itself. That is an E10 and a 13 mil nut, so you just want to go ahead and get those off. And then if you come around to the back here, it's a little dark unfortunately, but you'll have two exhaust hangers, one on each side of the differential. They're just two 18 mil nuts, it's super easy. They'll be right next to the axles. And then finally, you'll have some exhaust hangers over by the mufflers right at the end of the exhaust. They're really easy. They're only, I believe they're E10s as well, just E10 screws that you unscrew from the exhaust itself. You can kind of see they're red there. There's one on each side, one there and one here. So you'll go ahead and do that, and then the exhaust should come right out. And you can go ahead and put that to the side. Now, as you can see, you're gonna have a lot more space up here. There's gonna be these little like shields here. They're just like a few like random nuts and bolts and whatnot. Oh, and you're also gonna wanna do the rear V-brace as well. So that's these bolts here. I believe it was an internal Torx T40, I believe. So that was 8 screws in total. So you wanna do the T40s there. And then there's 18 mil right there. Screws that you're going to want to do as well, and then that will drop the V-brace back, the rear V-brace. Then like I said, you want to go ahead and take these two panels out. There's one like right here, and then there's one back farther up a bit. And then after you do that, you'll expose the drive shaft. To do the drive shaft, it's actually pretty simple. You're just going to want to make sure that the e-brake is not pulled so you can spin it. So disengage the e-brake. And then you're gonna go ahead and grab like an 18 mil on an impact or something. You can do a wrench too. It's only torqued to 70 foot-pounds, so it's not crazy tight, but for ease, I just used my impact here. So we're gonna go ahead and stick the 18 mil wrench up here and just get on the back of the nut here. You can kind of tell if I can spin this around. That's a little difficult to see, but there's nuts on the back of each of these screws. So get the wrench on the back of the nut and then throw the impact on there and just loosen it up. Some people take the entire guibo off with it. I don't, I just leave it. So I just take the 3 screws off that connect the actual drive shaft to the guibo. So they're 18 mils like I said. They come off pretty easily and they torque to I believe around 70 foot-pounds, so it's not super tight. And then after I do that, we're gonna go ahead and get started on getting the transmission jack underneath the trans, and then we're gonna go ahead and loosen the trans brace itself so we can get started on taking the bell housing bolts out. So as you can see, I took the 3 drive shaft bolts out of the guibo on the back of the trans. I did forget to mention that you do need to take out the center bearing here, just the 2 screws here that connect to the actual chassis of the car. Just go ahead and loosen these. They're 13 mils, and then you can actually pull the drive shaft directly out of the guibo. You can actually, so a lot of people don't know this, that it compresses here, the drive shaft, so you can actually move it in while you pull this out. It makes it a little bit easier. So once you do that, you just want to support the drive shaft itself with like a jack or just a jack stand or something, because you don't want it to let it hang on the actual differential itself, because otherwise it's not good for it. But yeah, just go ahead and loosen that bearing there, and then after that, you can pull the drive shaft out of the guibo. Okay, so as you can see, I have the transmission jack underneath the trans. I did remove that trans brace there. It's just two 13 mil nuts on top of the transmission mounts, and then also 13 mil bolts that go into the chassis itself. So you want to just go ahead and do those while the jack is up, giving support to the transmission. And then you can go ahead and get started on the bell housing bolts. And I will show you the ones I've taken out already. And I did forget to mention, you do need to remove the slave. It's just two 13 mil nuts that go on these little studs on the transmission. Can't see the top one with my fingers on it. Oh, there it is. So you just want to remove those two. You do kind of have to use like a swivel or something on the ratchet because it's a little difficult to get to. But once you get to those, you can take out the slave. It's really easy. And then after that, you can go ahead and start moving the bell housing bolts. You got an E10 here, an E10 here, and then an E10 up there. Sorry, it's a little crammed under here. But get those E10s, and then on this side, the passenger side, you're gonna have three E18s. They're the aluminum replaceable bolts that you're supposed to replace. And then on this side, you're gonna have two E18s, the same bolts that are on that side. You do have to kind of just mess around with extensions and whatnot to get to those bell housing bolts because it's a little tough, but once you get them, the transmission is pretty easy to take out. So from the bottom, you should be able to get most of the bell housing bolts. However, there are two top ones. I believe they're E14s or E16s. I can't quite remember, but you will have to kind of try to reach behind the engine there and get those with a ratchet or something. That's the best way I found to do it. But for some people, it might be just easier to go from the far back part of the transmission to get those two bolts out, but I like to just do it from the top. It's a little bit easier. But after you get all the bell housing bolts out, you can start to actually slide the transmission out from the engine. And then from there you can jack the transit down and start working on your clutch and flywheel. I will update you when I get the two top bell housing bolts out and when we start to actually drop the trans. Okay, so as you can see, we're on top of the engine bay. We got everything out of the way so we can see the back of the bell housing here. So this is one of the bolts here. That is an E12. And then you also have one, it's kind of hard to see, but it's right there. That's the E14. So those are the two that you can get from the top. And then there's one more that's farther on the passenger side. You can try to get it from the top. It's actually pretty difficult to get it there. We usually get it from the back of the car. That's probably the most difficult one, is that one passenger one on that far side. But these are the two that you want to get from the top. That's the E12 and the E14. Okay, so as you can see, we got the transmission off. We just had to get those three top bolts remaining. There's an E14 on the top right passenger side, an E14 in the very dead center of the top, and then an E12 that's by the starter. You just get those three bell housing bolts out, and then you can start to wiggle the back of the trans while it's supported by the trans jack, and then it will eventually just pull out, and you just got to kind of back it out, lower the trans jack a little bit, back it out, lower the trans jack, back it out, lower the trans jack, and then eventually it'll come out. But now we're going to go ahead and get started on the pressure plate. So they're just, what are they, 7 or
6 millimeter?
6 millimeter Allen key. So you just want to get started on those. Then once you get the pressure plate off, you can start working on the flywheel bolts.
Alright, so with the pressure plate and clutch out of the way, to get the flywheel off, you're going to want to just loosen these 6 T60s. They're going to be pretty tight. These torque to 89 foot-pounds. So get these bolts out, and then you're going to just wiggle the flywheel back and forth to actually remove it from the engine.
Okay, so for N55 specific cars, if you're gonna buy an N54 flywheel, which usually is the only thing you can buy, it's gonna come with this dowel in the center. It just punches in through the back, and then the little dowel will stick out in the end of it. That's for N54 cars. Specifically with N55s, they have like a reverse input shaft. So this dowel here that's normally on the flywheel for N54s is actually on the end of the N55 transmission's input shaft on the transmission itself. So what you have to do is basically just take like a socket and a hammer, or I mean the best way to do it is with a press. If you have like a hydraulic press, and you just line it up and press out this dowel, it should just come out with some force. But what I ended up doing, since I don't have a press, is I just took a socket and a hammer and just tapped it out. just being careful to make sure that I'm not like damaging the flywheel in any way. And then after you take out that actual dowel, it's gonna look like this. You need to take your pilot bearing. As you can see, this is a pilot bearing. And you need to get a socket around that same size and punch that in. This was a little bit more difficult to actually get in. I didn't freeze mine. I should have probably put it in the freezer for a few hours to cool it down because as you guys know, heat expands, and obviously when it's colder, it's gonna be a little bit smaller in diameter. So that would have probably helped, but I ended up just punching it in with a socket the exact size and a hammer. Like I said, the best way to do this is with a hydraulic press. You can get one from Harbor Freight for like 150 bucks. But yeah, exactly. We didn't really want to spend the money, so that's what we ended up doing. Like I said, that's N55 specific.
So now, same as usual, we're gonna throw the clutch and pressure plate up here. We're gonna torque this to 22 foot-pounds once we get it fully aligned, and then we'll pick back the camera up once we get the clutch and pressure plate on there.
So after getting the flywheel up, you're gonna want to go ahead and put the pressure plate up. Make sure you're using the correct alignment tool. If you buy an N54 clutch kit, it's gonna come with the N54 alignment tool. You need the actual N55 alignment tool. I ended up having to buy it directly from Spec because I could not find it anywhere. So I just ended up emailing tech at Spec. So it's like, I forget their email, but it's the tech email. Yeah, we can put it down in the description. And it was 15 bucks, but you need this type of alignment tool with the dowel at the end of it because that's like how it goes, actually aligns. It goes into the pilot bearing on the flywheel and then aligns up with the clutch. Otherwise it will not work. So after you get that alignment tool, you want to go ahead and put the clutch in, and then slowly just tighten the 6 bolts down in a star pattern. I kind of just gradually do it a little bit at a time and then change bolts and just slowly tighten each one down until they hit their torque spec. The torque spec is 22 foot-pounds for Spec clutches. That's Spec specific, I believe. Other clutches may be different, so if you're using like a Clutch Masters or OEM, you want to look up the actual clutch spec, that torque spec. But after you do that, you want to double check to make sure that your actual fingers on your pressure plate are pushed in. They should be pushed in since the spring is now pushed in and engaged properly. If it's not doing that, then you haven't tightened it down all the way, or your pressure plate is malfunctioning. But after that, we're gonna go ahead and stab this transmission back up to its home, and we'll update you guys right when that's finished.
All right, so as you can see, or not, because this camera sucks and doesn't focus, we got the transmission up, so that is good to go. We got I don't remember where exactly we left off, but we got the pressure plate on, new flywheel. So the transmission is stabbed, and we got the support back on. We're about to put the drive shaft back together now.
Alright, please.
So basically, with the shifter too, with the shifter linkage, God, dude, this camera. Fuck.
Just start over. That was the worst.
Alright, so as you can see, we do have the trans up now. All the bell housing bolts are in. So there's the 3 E10s, the 4, was it 4 or 5? 3 E18s. And then the two E14s, one on the top right, one in the middle and the top, then the E12 starter bolts. We have the trans support back on with the mounts connected. We're about to do the drive shaft now. But moving on to the shifter linkage that is back on. It's gonna be hard to see, but you gotta take a flathead and put the 2 connectors back onto the shifter linkage from the transmission. So you use a long flathead and do that. The shifter's back and connected here. So everything is good to go. We just gotta connect the drive shaft up and then we'll give it a first start. Make sure everything is mint.
So as you can see, guys, we have completed the clutch job on the N55 335i. This is the 2011 E92 335. Sorry to kind of jump ahead. We just really wanted to get finished. But we left off after we put the transmission up and the linkage together, as well as the trans brace. Pretty much all you have to do after that is connect the drive shaft. They torque to, I believe it's 90 foot-pounds, 88 or something like that. But You want to just go ahead and torque those down, make sure they're tight, and then you can just go ahead and put all the heat paneling and under trays up, and the car's done. Right now it's running great. It has no problems. The clutch is fully back to how it should be from factory. It just, in this case, has a spec stage 1 clutch. I decided to go with the stage 1 to save a little bit of money because I might be selling this car soon. Might be getting something a little bit different for the channel, maybe an Audi S4 I was looking at, or maybe a 2011, 2012 Mustang with the Gen 1 Coyote. But I just want to try something different. We already have that other black BMW 335, the single turbo one, on a channel. So, I mean, we'll have tons of content with that car, but I think it'd be really cool to have something different to get a wider base of viewers. If anybody has recommendations on what they think I should get to start promoting the channel with, please let me know. But thanks for watching, everyone. This was the clutch replacement on that N55 335, and I'll see you in the next video.